Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another weekly edition of the Vols ATB podcast. Me and Drew, of course, the old faithful, here to give y'all another jam-packed episode. A lot to uncover. Took last week off. Vols obviously having their run in Omaha. A lot to unpack there as we talk about the end of the season there. A lot of transfer portal news in the BaseVols roster after that. And then, of course, a huge weekend for Josh Heupel and the football Vols as they try to recap and secure this 2024 class. Drew, first off, how you doing, my man? How's life treating you?
I can't complain about life. Still kind of hurt about that ending to the baseball season. Even if it was to the eventual national champs. But yeah, other than that, man, I'm doing great. It's hard to complain about life right now, and especially with with football being only 63 days away. So it's it's coming, man. It's hard to believe. It feels like as soon as it leaves, it's just right around the corner all over again.
Oh yeah, man, for sure. Like we're lucky enough that our baseball program has taken these strides to give us like a benefit in that gap, making it shorter. But it's not always been like that. But man, 63 days opening up the season in Nashville against Virginia. We literally just talked about this. 11 a.m. my time, gonna be brutal, but a good opening week matchup against Virginia. Uh, really excited counting down the days for that. Obviously, let's go ahead and discuss it. The Baseballs had their little trip in Omaha coming to an end, losing to LSU in Game 1, beating Stanford in Game 2, and then falling to the Tigers again in Game 3. The Vols, they had a spark there. They got back. Obviously, to get that win against Stanford was really huge. But let's be honest, Drew, LSU, they were the preseason best team in the country, and they ended up being the best team in the country, winning Omaha. How do you kind of take away the ending of the Vols season?
I mean, I can't really complain too much about it. I think it's always, good to look at from a certain perspective, looking back in March and especially before that Vanderbilt, weekend when we were getting our tails kicked by Florida and LSU and everyone else in the conference. I think it was like a lot of people thought this team wasn't even going to make the tournament, much less beating Clemson in their regional at Clemson and then going on to win at Southern Miss as well to make it to Omaha for the second time in 3 years. So, and I mean, on top of that, this team did something that Tennessee hasn't done in 21 years, which is win a game in Omaha. So I think when you look at the big picture, I mean, it was a very successful season. I think maybe at the start of the season, we would have thought that this team had the talent to make it to Omaha, but just considering the ups and downs that they had to deal with, and especially, from guys like Chase Dolander and Chase Burns, for them to really step it up and really turn it around. I mean, it's a very successful season. I mean, there was only 8 teams that make the College World Series. So when you're one of those 8 that have an opportunity to win it all, I mean, you can't complain much.
I mean, yeah, man. I remember we were talking about the Vanderbilt and Arkansas series where we were literally looking on paper during the show, like, is Tennessee going to make, even the SEC or the whole tournament in general, man? Like, it was, we were already had crossed off the hosting the regionals to start off and, playing Clemson and Southern Miss like we did. Obviously, we did not have an easy path, but we kind of got what we wanted out of this team, and that was getting hot at the right moment. This team had a crazy run, whether it was from Simo and Zane Ditton and Blake Burke all having their moments, Maui Ahuna, all the guys finally clicking. I think we had a crazy postseason run. Just the viewership overall of what college baseball has become these last few years, especially this year with our series, the whole nation watching. Saw the games from Dolander, Burns, getting that second game, that W for us. All around, man, I cannot complain on the season. The brutal part is what happens after the season. We're gonna definitely discuss that, but a lot of new faces coming in, a lot of guys departing, whether it's going to the MLB draft that's shortly upcoming, or
Mm-hmm.
going to find them a new home. Um, I can't hate it, Drew, how this season ended. I think we had a crazy run, and like you said, the first win in Omaha in that long. It is obvious that what Tony Vitello has done in the last 3 years. Two out of the 3 years going to Omaha, a 2024 number one class according to D1 baseball on the way, and what they've done the past 2 days, adding massive pickups in the baseball transfer portal. The Vols are not done, and it's crazy to even talk about baseball, or we're 63 days away, and we should be locked in all the way on football. We're talking about baseball and transfer portal action after the season, after we just lost in Omaha. It's completely blowing my mind.
No, I mean, and that just speaks. I mean, it just speaks volumes for Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson and the staff in general. Where it's the end of June, almost July. I mean, fall camp is right around the corner, and we're still discussing about college baseball and still discussing Tennessee baseball. So I think it just speaks, wonders for Tony V and this program on how far they've come in such a short span. And, on top of that, baseball program finally getting the renovations that it needs, with potentially up to $100 million it's going to be going into Lindsey Nelson, starting, I believe it's almost as early as August or September when they're going to start, adding up to 2,500 more seats. So, I mean, it's a very exciting time. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that are going to need to be replaced, and a lot of guys are leaving the portal, which I guess we can deep dive into right now. Obviously, the biggest elephant in the room, Chase Burns leaving. Who had a 3.54 ERA, 13-5 in his career here at Tennessee. Not a lot of people know this, especially just the general fan, but it's been known for quite a while, at least the last 6 to 8 weeks, that this was a very high possibility that he was going to leave, really ever since he got out of that starting rotation. So, yeah. And I'm curious about your thoughts on this. For me personally, I mean, I think it's a tough loss and it's not, It's a tough loss in the sense that what we saw Chase Burns do in this tournament is, in the NCAA tournament, is the reason why he's considered to be a first-round draft pick next year. But at the same time, though, when you see the huge fallback that he had as a starter, as a Friday starter, having thrown over 10.2 ERA in conference play, and from what I've heard as well, I'm not the biggest fan of rumors, but I mean, the rumor is that, he kind of shoved off a lot of the pitching suggestions that Frank Anderson and the staff had for him in games, and in result lead to freaking bombs being, hit off of him. So I don't think it's that huge of a loss. I think regardless, one way or another, he was going to be gone next season for the MLB. But I'm certainly curious to hear on what your thoughts are on it.
I mean, it's no doubt that, when Chase Burns came in his freshman year, he was a first-round draft, projection. And then after this year, how he closed out, that stock definitely went back up. And, hearing the rumors of the teams that are involved, obviously TCU, Vanderbilt, some even LSU chatter out there, not even surprised, man, because going back to that Arkansas-Vanderbilt series when all that took place, like you talked about in conference play, it just kind of felt like after that, his whole mood kind of changed. And I'm sure there's a lot of family and outside input and his input like that, but I think going away and after this, as the dust settles at both sides, Tennessee and Chase Burns are going to have some regrets. I think there's probably some kind of bad vibe going on that may have led to these things, and at the end is just already had his mind made up. But I definitely think there's some childish play, and I think Wes Rucker, when he dropped that article today, it was very spot on, because I don't think Frank Anderson wanted to lose Chase Burns, and I don't think Chase Burns wanted to leave Tennessee. Obviously, he grew up a Vanderbilt fan, he says, but playing in your home state of Tennessee, everything you've done after this year, having that moment on the camera against Southern Miss where you literally, improved your whole stock, I'm sure there was some kind of way that, if it was, NIL related or something like that, that Spire Sports could have went down. But I really do point to that pitching rotation spot where I think he just felt the disrespect of that, he wasn't going to be a starter for this season. And I definitely think that it was known and addressed to him that he would be a starter for next season, because if he's not, then that would just be stupid. But he wasn't going to be the Friday starter. They already made that clear that it probably would be Drew Beam's job. And I mean, obviously it goes, he's gone. We can't really do nothing about that. The elephant in the room, the offers that were on the table of, Tennessee, not being able to match whatever offer. But let's be honest, TCU in the state of Texas, man, it is ridiculous the money that is down there. We talked about that in every single sport. And if he does go to TCU and that number is true of $500,000, he has one more year and then he's a first-round draft pick. I would definitely understand the need to do that. But I'm definitely glad it's not Vanderbilt and LSU from what it seems. So right now, obviously, as an official decision is coming up. But I just think there's going to be a lot of regret from both sides. I don't think it hurts Tennessee, especially after the conference play. But what we saw in the postseason play, if we could have had that Chase Burns and then, him been locked in, obviously the relationship with him and Frank Anderson just wasn't there, Drew.
So, I mean, I can say it's a fact. I mean, I'll just say right here, it's a complete fact. Yeah. NIL money is not an issue with Chase Burns. In fact, Tennessee was more than willing to pay just as much, if not even more, than what schools like LSU and TCU and Vanderbilt has offered. It really just boils down to the fact that he just does not have any trust in the staff. And, while I can understand it, at the same time, I think someone like Chase Burns has to look himself in the mirror and be like, look, I fucking sucked this whole entire conference. as a starter. I mean, I think allowed 7 runs against Florida, his last game that he started in
Yeah,
the
that was
first inning.
pretty brutal.
Like
In
I mean,
Knoxville.
in Knoxville too. Like I think I think it's understandable from both ends. Like I think we all know that he has the talent to be the Friday starter, game one starter. There's no discussion about that.
He was already there
But
before. Yeah,
I mean, he was
we
already
saw it.
there. But the problem is that when you're very reluctant on having different changes on your style of pitching, and you're not willing to take that advice, and you're not willing to accept that, that affects the entire team. And I mean, and it surprises me to the sense of like him being a junior, starting next year, he couldn't even see that he was pitching better out of the bullpen. Maybe he did. Maybe he just still thinks that he deserves to be an automatic starter. But I think this team's going to move on, man. I think they're going to be fine. I think there's going to be some regret, maybe for sure, on wanting to try and keep a guy of his caliber. But, I mean, with a lot of the guys they have coming in, and especially a couple of dudes that they have, added from the portal too. I mean, Tennessee is a very popular destination in college baseball, especially for any guy that's in the portal right now. So it's a tough loss, but I mean, I think you move on, and I mean, Tennessee is going to be just fine going into next season. They'll still be a top 15, top 25 team, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Chase Burns. But I will say this. I mean, if he goes to TCU, I think that's totally fine. It's totally valid. But now, if he goes to Vanderbilt or LSU,
I'm livid.
Personally, in
Very
my
curious.
opinion, he
He's
reaches the same level of
Henry Toto.
hatred as Henry T. Absolutely. I think he reaches the same level of hatred among this fan base as Henry T. If not even more, because Henry Toto was good, but it wasn't like he was single-handedly number one, our best guy. I think we thought that he had the potential to be a first-round pick, but I don't think he was a guy that was like irreplaceable necessarily.
Yeah.
Chase Burns is like, a top 10 pick. Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
I
Even
think
after the season Dolander had, he's projected to go number 7. I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, I think he would reach that level if he went to Vanderbilt or LSU. But I would like to think that he knows better than just, for the most part, just to leave the conference and try to go to a different destination.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the what has to go, get back and return through the transfer portal, and they've lost Chase Burns, now Hollis Fanning the day before that, to a guy that I had some kind of hope for. He's gone as well. Tennessee obviously is fine at the pitching position. AJ Russell probably going into the weekend rotation. You have Wyatt Evans is probably going to be returning from injury. Bryce Jenkins, and then a lot of talented freshmen, ones that even playing on ESPN Plus right now in the national championship of high school, is a Tennessee commit this incoming in next year's class. Given what happens in the MLB draft, obviously, to talk about what Tennessee's added in the portal, first it was AJ Costley from Jacksonville State, a guy that's going to be a really good guy in the bullpen, I think, for Tennessee coming out of the pen. Then you also, obviously, yesterday the huge one was Cannon Peebles, the catcher from NC State. NC State All-American. That guy is going to be a stud. If we saw the postseason, Drew, what we need most is probably a catcher.
God.
There's no telling what happens if there's not one or two errors in that
not
game.
just from batting, because, no disrespect to Cal Stark, but he was a complete liability. It's like as soon as you knew the kid was going on the plate up at bat, it's like, that's an automatic out. But, even defensively, he made so many mistakes, especially in that LSU game, in the second time we played them in Omaha. Having a guy like Peoples, dude, that is a game changer. It's kind of like one of the most underrated positions in the sense of like where if you have a catcher that can hit, that changes everything in your lineup. We saw that, even with Evan Russell a couple of years ago, when he transitioned from outfield to catcher. Having a guy that's able to play, solid defensively, but's able, to get some hits at bat as well, it's not a very common thing. So, this was a huge time get for Tony V. And, he's obviously an instant starter, once he walks on campus.
Yeah, man. And then today, the third big pickup, I think, was, Nate Snead, obviously, the Wichita State pitcher, freshman. He could have gone just about anywhere, Drew. I think his final two were, Tennessee and Arkansas. Picks Tennessee, had an ERA of 3.16 and struck out 53 in his 42.2 innings pitched out of the bullpen as a freshman. Even had the starting nods sometimes. I think this is a guy that, he did that as a freshman. Obviously, people that don't know baseball are going to point to the level of competition he's playing. But this guy's definitely a stud. He even hit in the triple digits. Tennessee losing two guys that had that potential in their arms. I think it's really critical to get that kind of back. We've seen what it's done for our bullpen, especially 2 years ago when we had Ben Joyce.
Yeah.
And this guy even has an exit velocity of running velocity of 105.6. So he's probably not even at his full potential yet. Did all that as a freshman, hitting triple digits. I think this guy, he might even break his way into the starting rotation. Might even get that third game starting behind AJ Russell, Drew Beam, AJ Russell. And maybe you see Snead in there. But I really do not think that Tennessee's done. Obviously, you have the Wofford transfer, and then the big name, the Clemson guy that was in town today. You can probably talk more about him than I know, but that would be a huge infield utility pickup as well. And if Tony V is able to kind of restock and just rebuild after going down in Omaha, I think these guys are taking notes that Tennessee's going to be a well-known contender in Omaha. 2 out of the last 3 years, could have been 3 of the last 4 if COVID didn't screw us out of that team and what we could have had with that. I think it's just crazy. I don't know another program that you can look and say that they have consistent trips like this.
I mean, I think Tony V knew after, just not just his, watching in Omaha, but all season. I mean, the needs that we needed on this team more than anything else was, in my opinion, a left-handed pitcher. I mean, just having different types of guys. I mean, because Kirby didn't really play that much this year when you really think about it, and just having 2 or 3 guys in your bullpen that are left-handed and are able to throw different types of off-speed pitches is a huge thing, just to get a good mix-up and whatnot, but. I mean, especially shortstop, man. I mean, Malley picks it up near the late of the season, but he was a total liability defensively almost the entire year. You know what I mean? And and I think he's going to go to the draft as well. I think. I might be wrong. He might not even be able to come back. I think has he used all of his eligibility, or is he draft eligible? I think he might be draft eligible, but
I'm not a baseball expert. That would be a question for our boy Logan Quinton.
Logan would certainly know that answer. But I think he's eligible for the draft, so I think it's a high possibility that he goes. And you're obviously looking for another third baseman too, with Zane Denton being gone. Now,
the thing about Zane Denton, I know Zane Denton gave out his goodbye, right? But I think Zane Denton has a lot to think about because obviously he was a really clutch hitter, but I think his batting average could have been a lot higher. With some other decisions making, it was a problem when he first came from Bama. We saw the clutch hits he had, the grand slams, the home runs, the walk-offs. But I think that's a guy that, he has to really think about something. Obviously, 1 year in Tennessee after transferring, where is his projection going to be at? If it's, a single A where you're traveling all around the country in those beat up motels. I heard this on Fox Sports Knoxville today and Fan Run Radio. If you're kind of traveling all around, I mean, Tennessee, I know you can stay in Knoxville for another year, have the Taylor Swift memes, your stock is booming for another year, and you're getting a guaranteed $50K plus in NIL probably to come back, and we know we need a third baseman. I definitely think that, if his projection is a little low because of those things like the batting average and what did cost them, if another year would be very beneficial for Zane Denton, and it would also make a huge spark for this fan base for next year as well.
I mean, from what I've seen, it looks like he's supposed to be drafted within the first 5 rounds. So the way I've kind of seen, the trends of players is if they're drafted within the first 6 or 7 rounds of the MLB draft, you're talking about close to a 6-figure contract, at least low 6 figures. It's hard not to say, yes to that. It will be interesting. We desperately need a third baseman. I mean, even if he does come back, we still need to get one in the portal just for depth, in general. But I would also say, just continue adding guys in the outfield. I mean, I know we have Cole Eaton at, who is a commit, but obviously the possibility of him coming here, 5-star outfielder and potentially being a first-round draft pick is very slim to none. But we have seen crazier shit though. So
I remember last year when we were talking about our commit list, and granted we do have the number 1 class according to D1 Baseball for this upcoming year. The draft is going to be really important for that class, just because I remember last year we got a lot of guys that we were just hoping would make it to campus and that we would have been really high on, ended up going in the second, third round, and that's more of a popular thing in Major League Baseball is for high school kids to just be able to go out of the draft immediately. Obviously a smart decision to go play pro. Who would pass that up? But I think when Tennessee is looking at losing guys like this in their rotation, and last year losing 8 of their 9, making it back to Omaha this year. That's not going to be an easy thing to continue to do as you're turning over your roster, and you're kind of banking on this recruiting class that we've been able to look on all year long, especially in those tough midseason times. We're like, hey, our recruiting class next year is going to be tough, but then after going to Omaha, our expectations, were risen, and then being able to be like, oh wow, okay, we do have this class coming in. I think it adds to the expectations. So if you can keep some of those guys, get them to campus next year, there's no telling what the guys that we don't even know that this year we grew to know that are coming in for next year. Like, it's just ridiculous. I can't believe we're talking about baseball recruiting for the first 30 minutes.
Well, I mean, it's just one of those things with college baseball, man, especially recruiting. Like, it's a very unpredictable thing. I mean, there was at one point where Tennessee had Mookie Betts committed to him, that was 10 years ago. But I mean, I know from personal friends that have gone on and got drafted in the MLB and are playing in the majors now. If you get drafted within the first 3 rounds, like one of the guys I know, Brandon Marsh, who plays for the Phillies now, if you get drafted in the first 3 rounds, you're getting close to a guaranteed $1 million in contract money. Like, and you don't. I mean, if you're 17, 18 years old, you're not going to say no to that.
You're not thinking twice to that.
Yeah, you're not thinking college baseball
about that, man.
So it's one of those things. I mean, Tony V is a very persuasive guy where, like, his, players love him, recruits love him. So, I mean, who knows? You can never say never. I mean, crazier things have happened, in college baseball recruiting, but just in the grand scheme of things and just being, in general, it'd be very surprising if Cole Eaton came here. Now, if he did, he's an instant starter day one, and you're talking about a freshman All-American that's just going to tear it up, in SEC for years to come. But regardless, though, this program's in a great position. It's a very attractive place, and if you're a guy that's in the portal where you came off of, like, being an all-conference player, I mean, why would you not come to Tennessee? So, but regardless, I think that's enough college baseball talk until about, let's say, January or February, hopefully.
Obviously, whenever we get our full crew back, if we do, I can't wait for that day to happen. But I think that Lo, Alex, and Rob will have some regarding words for this past season. But I think I'm ready to turn that page as well. Obviously, what we have in 63 days is going to be very important to this show, and we're going to be diving into that, giving our predictions for the whole football season. But cannot pass up what we got coming up on the court. The Vols basketball is absolutely turning over the roster. The videos coming out had me pretty hyped up. Drew, seeing Dalton Kennett, Jordan Gainey, and a lot of other guys, just getting me kind of excited for this upcoming season. And then today the news breaking out that Tennessee will be heading to Chapel Hill next year, playing North Carolina in this upcoming season. How do you feel about that one and the rest of our SEC schedule as we dive into basketball?
Man, this is going to be a very, very fun basketball season. Not to mention, obviously football is going to be a great season for all of us as well. But, man, basketball might just as be, if not even more exciting. Vols got announced playing North Carolina in the inaugural SEC ACC Challenge at Chapel Hill. I believe it's the day before Thanksgiving, too. So on national television, will be on ESPN. It's going to be an unbelievable matchup. I was looking at our schedule today. Dude, our schedule, our conference especially, is the most insane thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
So let's just break it down a little bit. So I got it broken down for us. So we start off the year playing at Wisconsin. First game of the year at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's going to be a top 25 team. They're going to bounce back. They're probably going to be a sleeper pick for the Big Ten this year, in my opinion.
It should be.
And then you're talking about a couple weeks afterwards, we head over to Maui, and you're talking about potentially we'll play either Gonzaga, who's preseason number 8, Kansas, who's going to be preseason number 1, Marquette, who's preseason number 10, Purdue, who's going to be preseason number 3, Syracuse, not the same Syracuse as 10 years ago, of course, but, still ACC. UCLA, who's going to be a preseason top 25 team as well, and, of course, Chaminade, who hosts the damn thing, but they're Division II, so that's a guaranteed win if you play them. But you're talking about potentially playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 preseason top 25 teams in that tournament alone, and then you follow up playing at North Carolina, and then you play Illinois home, which is going to be a fantastic matchup, and then NC State and San Antonio. This might be.
Who the fuck's gonna go to San Antonio to watch it? Respectfully, I don't understand that decision. Just like
we did the same thing last year when we played Maryland in Brooklyn. It's just one of those like Colorado basketball classics that they have. If the money's there, you're gonna do it.
Me
But you're talking
personally,
about potentially Tennessee is going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 preseason top 25 teams. And that doesn't include teams that are inevitably they're going to be in the top 25, including Auburn and Kentucky as well.
Vanderbilt.
I mean Vanderbilt potentially. I mean,
Broken. Holy
I,
shit.
I don't know, man. Jerry Stackhouse is the last 10 games for them. They looked pretty damn good. So but when you look at our, they did announce the other day that we have our SEC home schedule and away. So we'll play Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt at home. And then our road trips in conference play is going to be Alabama, at Arkansas, at Georgia, Kentucky, of course, Mississippi State, Missouri, South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt. So really interesting that we're playing Alabama and Texas A&M on a home and home as well. But I mean, dude, SEC this year is probably going to be considered one of the best, if not the best, conference in college basketball. And from what I've been hearing, at least with this team, a lot, with some of their summer workouts that they've had, Freddie Buckets is already predicted to be a late first-round draft pick. Hasn't even dribbled a basketball yet. Hadn't even played a game. He's already predicted to be a first-round draft pick, which is an unbelievable thing. Dalton Connects from Northern Colorado is apparently just balling it up. Just as good as advertised as far as shooting the three ball and playing with confidence and being aggressive. And Chris Ledlin from Harvard, they say, has a really high basketball IQ that he's able to see the court very well and can create opportunities. When you look at this roster, man, I mean, not to mention Jordan Gainey, too. Dude, this team's nuts. There's a reason why ESPN has us preseason number 6. When you go on top of Santee and Triple J returning, with Sakai included, making this an elite defense again. Meshack, Toby Awaka. I mean, dude,
Toby's had 3 double doubles in the last 4 games with Team USA. That is actually insane. Like, just all around. And
now, granted, the U19 FIBA Basketball World Cup is not the same competition as opposed to playing in the SEC or just college basketball in general. But it's still very good, and I think this is a fantastic experience for him on learning to play different types of schemes and, different types of players as well. But, dude, this basketball team is going to be damn good. I mean, they're going to be incredible. I mean, I know we said this last year, right?
We did say this fucking last year.
And I know we got a little too hyped up about us beating Gonzaga by 20 in the preseason game, and I think we had a little bit too much of a stock on Tyreek Key as well. But if Rick Barnes allows his guys to play the free confidence basketball that his roster is just dying to play and doesn't hold them back offensively, this team, in my opinion, doesn't have just the opportunity to make their first ever Final Four. I think they have a very good opportunity to win the national championship.
What made me really, really happy is when Tennessee basketball put out that social media video, and it was of just High Meshack and Dalton Kennett and Jordan Gainey in back-to-back videos, and it was Rick Barnes coaching them up, but it was on, them behind the arc doing, like, immediately getting shots up from 3, like, catch and shoot immediately, which, obviously how pass-heavy our offense really is and how much we've, like, complained about that and, like, not taking the first shots. Seeing those happen, obviously Meshack hitting the 3, seeing Dalton Kennett as advertised, and then Jordan Gainey's quick release is insane. It is like disgustingly good. Seeing those back-to-back shots, and obviously it was for a social media video, was glad to see him in game, but just made me really happy knowing, like, the situation that if Meshack can figure it out offensively, Drew, on top of everything that we have brought in, I can't, like, stress enough how important he was for that run going into the postseason in March. It was absolutely insane what he was doing defensively and in conference play. And I just think with everyone coming back, Santee and Sakai, you have your leadership guys, not to mention Josiah's here on a freaking preferred walk-on at this point. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous what this roster has. And I'm definitely excited. When you were talking about the whole out of conference and opening up play, my mind immediately stopped when I heard Purdue. It's like the Vol in me after the last few years of football and basketball against them. Yeah. I would love to catch them in Maui. We should have caught them last year in the tournament. I really wanted to. I would love to catch them in Maui. Of course, that list, you have to just, win in general against teams like that, against Marquette, Gonzaga, Kansas. Like, it's going to be a very tough opening, but I think it'll definitely help us down the line as we get into conference play. Maybe this team doesn't have it figured out to start the season like we saw last year where, like, we had questionable losses to Colorado, etc. Maybe it takes them, a few weeks to get going and get, like, on paper, obviously they look really good, but they got to gain that chemistry in games. I just think, me personally, I think this could be what we saw a few years ago, where Tennessee like goes damn near undefeated in conference play, or something insane like that, where it might be one of the best seasons to.
I wouldn't go as far as undefeated in conference play because I mean the SEC's got about 5 or 6 teams that are in the preseason top 25, and even schools like Alabama did lose a lot in the draft. I
Yeah,
mean
they
these are
know it's
still
reloading.
schools that recruited top 10, top 5 nationally. So I think I mean, but I don't see why not. This team can't be top 2, top 3 in conference. I mean I think they'll have the second best odds, in my opinion, of winning the SEC. Um, but there's no, I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong if this team finishes second or third in the SEC in conference play because SEC is going to be absolutely brutal in basketball this year. I mean, especially considering the amount of talent that Texas A&M has returning back, and I think schools like Vanderbilt and even I mean, I think even Florida are going to be a little bit better than they were last year. But dude, when you look at this roster, man, I mean, I think one of the biggest things for us that we were kind of a little bit hesitant about was like having guys like Julian Phillips and Tyreek Key and seeing how they would be able to adjust and have that chemistry going. But dude, at the same time though, like looking at this team, I mean, you're talking about Triple J, Freddie
Coming off the
Buckets, who in
bench.
my opinion, it's not even really that big of adjustment because he's been on the team since January, and Santee as well, and Adu and Awaka. I mean, these are guys that's a pretty much a veteran lineup at that point with a lot of
What I think,
experience.
when I look at that, and I think about how many times last year where Tennessee, when they had really big wins, they had multiple guys have 15 to 20 points on the board, and then we saw a lot of games where Tennessee took tough losses where only one guy would pop off for 15 plus, and the rest nobody could really be found, and we begged and begged and begged to see more guys involved. When you look at Freddie Buckets, a guy that obviously is known for his three-point shot, Dalton Kennett, and what he's been able to do, obviously coming to the SEC, like you mentioned, a lot more tougher competition, but he seems made out to be everything he is. Everyone that we know we already have that's getting an extra year under their belt, I just think it's going to be really, really hard for those guys not to go out there and have multiple guys and multiple dogs. Like we talked about Rick Barnes, that video clip last year where he's like, we don't got no dogs on the team. No one has that it factor. I think you're going to have a lot of guys that step up and are able to like sync, and it's not just a one guy show. I think this team is going to be able to have multiple factors, and that's going to make Tennessee unstoppable, Drew. That's why it could be one of the better seasons where Tennessee is not, where they're going and beating teams down, just because it's not you stop one guy, we have another answer for you.
The one thing that helped last year's team back more than anything else was just the lack of offensive play. And we
Yeah.
just had too many guys that were far too inconsistent on being able to get baskets for us and win games. We saw that. I mean, the tournament was a fantastic example of that. I mean, we couldn't get anything going offensively against what was it? Who we played in the first round?
Fucking Louisiana Lafayette.
Yeah, against Louisiana Lafayette. Second round, Comwad played like his hair was on fucking fire and played
And
the
he
game of his
fucking
life.
disappeared to Michigan, man.
And
Forget
then
about
in
Rich.
Sweet 16 against FAU just completely disappeared. I mean, like, so I mean, and when you have guys like Awaka where they got that experience as early as they did, and they're going to be able to translate that, going into next season. I think you're going to see a lot of dudes that are going to play a lot more loose, play with a lot more confidence. And I think Rick Barnes has to realize that. I'm trying to figure out the way how to phrase this. I think he has to realize that he has to give up a little bit of his defense in order to get more production offensively, which
Yeah, I
means
mean the
that
stats show
he's
that.
going to have to, allow guys to play
Make
freely,
mistakes, yeah.
make mistakes,
Miss drives,
miss drives,
transition defenses.
shoot. I mean, shoot contested threes. I mean, like, I'm not talking about doing that every single game, but like, you have to allow them to play with their confidence, but as opposed in the back of their head that they shouldn't shoot. Like, you don't just play for the best pass and for if a guy feels confident that he's going to be able to make this 30-footer, you allow him to shoot that 30-footer.
His name's Freddie Buckets, man.
And that's what they did with Grant Williams and that Admiral team in 2018, 2019. Like they played freely. They felt like if they felt like they were hot, they were going to go ahead and shoot it. So I think he's realized from last year and the last couple of seasons that he has to allow that to happen. And if he does, man, the sky's the limit with this team. It really is.
Yeah, and I think how big this is for guys like J.P. Estrella, Cade Phillips, Cameron Carr that are just getting their feet wet. It's going to be hard for them to maybe see the court with this stacked of a roster, like we saw last year with a lot of guys that just couldn't get on the court BJ Edwards. But like I
Well,
definitely
no.
it's not like that though. Not like
No.
that at all.
Before you make the BJ Edwards comment, like
It's not like
let's just be
I
real.
was gonna
It's
keep
not
it
even
away.
remotely close to saying
That's what I was gonna say though.
because he had no business playing last year.
Yeah.
He's not good enough. There's a reason why he went from Tennessee to SMU. Okay, and there's no
Yes.
disrespect to his kid. I hope nothing but the best for him, but he was a complete liability defensively. He couldn't do anything offense. He wasn't willing to move. He can't shoot. You know, he has a very limited range, even for a guard. That man had no business playing in the SEC. So I think the
As
difference.
I was gonna say, I think this is gonna be really
I hope.
beneficial. Really beneficial for guys like JP Estrella, Cade Phillips, and Cameron Carr when they have guys like Vescovi and Zakai, Dalton Kennett, obviously with his experience all over. Chris Ledlam that we still fail to mention sometimes, which is absolutely insane because that guy is coming from the Ivy Leagues on the top ropes. A guy that's going to be a huge piece for this team. And you look at those upcoming freshmen, like a class that we just had. I think they're definitely going to be able to learn and get like a lot under their belt. Just seeing Coach Barnes already coaching up Estrella in those videos, getting his high touch and getting the ball out, down low. I think they're just going to be able to build, and if they can trust the process, for the next year or two, they're going to be coming in really well experienced. It's going to be like a lot to have that veteran, mindset. And I think you talk about, the Grand Admiral days, like we have a lot of experienced guys that are going to be able to pave the way for the future of this program. Because a couple years ago, before these guys came into Tennessee's program, you had a lot of question marks of what the future of Tennessee basketball might be like under Barnes. And it seems like that flame's kind of going away and it's kind of building itself.
I mean, I think I wouldn't like, at least for me, I wouldn't say that like I had question marks about Rick Barnes because I know exactly what we're getting with Rick Barnes, which is you're going to have a team that's consistently in the top 15, top 25 every single year. You're going to win 20 plus games. You're going to make the tournament every single year, and you're going to lose some games where you had no business losing to, and you may fizzle out in the tournament. And for me, like that's okay. Like honestly, I know that sounds fucking crazy to a lot of our fans, but if we can make the tournament every single year, which we've done for the last 4 tournaments,
Yep.
I'm more of content with that. Like I mean, that's just considering where Tennessee basketball was 10 years ago, especially with Konzo and Donnie Tyndall, and even prior to Bruce with Buzz Peterson and Jerry Green and Kevin O'Neal. Like the tournament was a pipe dream,
I mean, Drew,
for a lot of
people. Like, and think about this. We talked about baseball. Tony V could have had 3 out of the last 4 years, but has 2 out of the last 3 in Omaha. Rick Barnes is pretty much a lock to make it to the tournament. The college football playoff is, very hard to get into, but we saw this year that in the next 2 years when it expands to 12 teams, that Josh Heupel is going to probably be a sure lock to get Tennessee possibly into the college football playoffs. It's going to be crazy when we're talking about the day and age of all men's sports going into, championship possibilities. Like it's just, the path is there. And I think obviously for Tennessee as a whole, but definitely this year with like a roster like with Rick Barnes and stuff, like just getting to the tournament, man, it's not. I think a lot of people take it for granted, is what I'm saying.
Oh, 1,000,000%. I think a lot of people have forgotten where we were. Not just 10 years ago. I mean, hell, like 5 years ago. Once Rick Barnes started, when his first couple seasons, I mean, it was brutal to watch. Some of those teams, but I mean, we know what we're getting with them, but I mean, there's just I don't know. I got a different feeling about this team this upcoming season than I've had with any other team. And I think the huge difference between this team and, that 2018-19 team that we all love is the fact that we have depth. You have 4 or 5 guys on the bench that are going to be coming off the bench that could score. As opposed to that team with Admiral and Grant, where it's like you had that starting 5 and then what, maybe Jordan Bowden or Lamonte coming off the bench, and that's it. I mean, you're talking about your second biggest, center was Derek Walker. I mean, like guys that just weren't good enough for this league. But you got 9, 10, I mean, hell, almost 11 guys out there that have the talent and capability to be able to be productive. And I think if you're a guy like Cade Phillips or Cameron Carr, or I mean, even arguably even DJ Jefferson, like I know like you want to go on the court, you want to be on the court, and you want to get minutes. But realistically, I think they even have to know like it's going to be better for them in the long run to be able to be developed by Barnes. Because if you look at guys like Schofield, Grant Williams, I mean, hell, I would even argue, Vescovi as well. Having that opportunity to get, be able to be developed by the staff, it's proven over time with a lot of players under this program that it's worked out big time.
I think that's going to be very beneficial for those kind of guys for sure. And I'm putting my eyes on a guy like DJ Jefferson, man, because obviously his defense is getting figured out. His offensive threat needs to be figured out. But man, like I can't wait for the games where we have like a fast break and DJ's down the court and just does like some insane dunk contest poster. Like it's his athleticism that we saw already is out of this world, and I think that guy has all the tools to just blow up. The coaching he's getting now is going to be very beneficial for him, and I think that not just him but the guys we talk about. Obviously, if you understand what the path is, it's hard to trust the process, but it really does. It's going to pay off, especially with where this program is right now. It is.
Oh, I mean, there's several guys that are going to be on this team that are going to be able to make those sensational dunks, like DJ Jefferson. I mean, Dalton Connect is going to be one of those too. I mean,
Chris Ledlam
too. I mean, and I mean, even Triple J has shown that, shown flashes of that as well. So there's
man.
Dude, and there's so much damn talent on this team. I mean, it's honestly almost overwhelming on how much talent is on this basketball team. So you're going to look at, you're easily going to see, in my opinion, about 10, 11, 12 guys potentially play every single game just because we have that much talent out there. And I think it's going to be exciting, dude. There's going to be a lot of marquee matchups, a lot of great matchups, especially in Thompson-Boling with Illinois, and Kentucky, of course, and Texas A&M coming up. But it's going to be a fun basketball season. There's no doubt about that. But finally, enough with the basketball talk, Brando. We got to talk about this incredible recruiting weekend that Josh Heupel and the staff just had. Give us a little bit of the rundowns on, some little cliff notes and what happened. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts on where are we at with Jefferson and Mike Matthews, and what are the possibilities, if high possibility, that we get both of them to commit to Rocky Top.
I mean, yeah, man. I think, last week we didn't really get to recap the June 16th weekend that was just as stacked as this past weekend. A lot of names that, came out of that with obviously Williams Nwaneri, Cam Franklin, having Merklinger back, guys like Daniel Calhoun, Kai Bates. I think Tennessee sits well with a lot of those guys, including Kai Bates and Braylon Staley. Obviously, Staley has his commitment date set for Friday. I think Tennessee's in a really, really good position there to get the 4-star wide receiver, but he did come off a visit to North Carolina. Has been liking a lot of UNC stuff, but I think that's kind of just to kind of throw everyone off. You come off your recent visit, you're gonna show love to that fan base. I think Tennessee's really excited there. They want to take 4 wide receivers in this class, so they lost J.J. Harrell early on. This would be a very good refresher to have, a guy that's insane athletically with his long jump, 2-time state champion in South Carolina right now. Tennessee wants to add there. Kai Bates, top 10 defensive back. Sounds like he went to LSU, that Tennessee was, hoping he wouldn't make it to that visit, but the LSU On 3 mod said yesterday that it sounds like the top 10 corner could be Rocky Top bound, saying that he's been leaning towards Tennessee coming out of his LSU OV. That is absolutely huge for a guy that's, growing up talking about LSU being DBU when his whole recruitment was very high on LSU, for Tennessee to get him in his OV, get him around some of the guys like Boo Carter and et cetera that were there during that huge weekend. I think that played a huge mark. This past weekend, Drew, it was probably the most insane one since last year with that Memorial Day weekend, the Rocky Top Palooza. Tennessee hosting, of course, the 5-star and 4-star wide receiver Mike Matthews, the 5-star and the 4-star in-state Baylor athlete Amari Jefferson, who's already committed to Tony Vitello for baseball. I guess the big elephant in the room for that, Mike Matthews already has made it very clear that he wants to commit after his official visits has wrapped up Clemson, USC, and Tennessee. I think you could definitely expect a decision from early on July, maybe even the first week of July to the second or third week. I think he wants to get this thing wrapped up. I really do like where Tennessee stands. There's a lot of Clemson chatter out there based off their recruits and what their recruits are that are committed are telling people, but I think Tennessee and their staff and guys like Boo Carter and Jake Merklinger have had their hands all over this one. Seem really confident. I think Tennessee's in a great position to land the 5-star wide receiver in this class, which obviously last year compared to this year when Memorial Day weekend, if they can come out with a positive note compared to the negative note, that would be really good. The one that's really questionable to me, I'm more questionable about Amari Jefferson just because fell in love with Alabama throughout the process, made it back to Tennessee for the football side. Like we said, he is a Vols baseball commit. Had a lot of time to spend with Josh Heupel and Kelsey Pope Him and Mike Matthews were out on the boat, having the full recruiting weekend, going down the Tennessee River, seeing Neyland, seeing all the facilities, everything like that. I think that was huge for Tennessee. Austin Price and the VolQuest guys, they feel confident and really good about Tennessee's where their placement is right now. But a guy that's going to be a late July decision. Is Bama going to try to make some more phone calls? It's going to be, I think, I can most compare it honestly to the Arian Carter recruitment last year, just of how it went down to the wire. I think Tennessee has to stay recruiting him heavily, having guys in his ear like Boo and Matthews. If he does, get in the boat before Amari is in the boat, I think that's going to be huge. You cannot stop recruiting in this kind of battle. I think it's going down to the wire. I'd even say 50-50. Bama feels optimistic. Our guys feel optimistic. Would be a huge pull. I feel like you can't let an in-state wide receiver get out, but I think we could see how Tennessee could come out, Spire Sports and the Vol Club, give that one final phone call and try to secure the in-state, make them stay home like they did with Arian Carter. I do have a lot of my eyes on a lot of guys that were here this weekend, including the 4-star running back Braylon Russell. He was getting hit it off with guys like Dylan Sampson, Jalen Wright, and the other 2024 running back commit Peyton Lewis, just hitting it off, coming off his Arkansas visit. He is from Fayetteville, Arkansas, but I think Tennessee's in a really, really great spot there. Deciding on his birthday, July 14th, I think this is a huge, huge visit to get him in on. I would not be surprised if Tennessee can have that thunder and lightning combo. Peyton Lewis still going all over the charts, ranked the top 10 fastest guy in the country right now. So just seeing like how Josh Heupel and everyone is figuring out this offensive side, it's all coming together. My biggest question mark is on the offensive line, but we're going to get to that in a minute. But you look at the quarterback, you got Merklinger, you got Peyton Lewis at running back. Can you get Braylon Russell in there with him? You have guys like Jonathan Eccles who locked down their recruitment alongside with 4-star in-state DB Caleb Beasley not going to Notre Dame. I think those are two huge ones. And then you try to fill it in at wide receiver with Mike Matthews, Amari Jefferson, get Staley in the boat. And I think Tennessee might try to take a fourth. I would have my eyes on Terrell Anderson from Anderson, North Carolina, that was here this past week, and another 4-star. I think Tennessee probably sits well there. I think he wants to come to Tennessee, but Tennessee's still trying to figure it out and playing their cards right with the recruiting class and how they're going to kind of move that around. Then you look at the offensive line, man. I know you look at, this being a huge weekend for guys like William Satterwhite and in-state 4-star Ronan O'Connell. But my biggest, takeaway was the movement that Tennessee made with Bennett Warren. A huge, no exaggeration, huge 6'8", 350-pound offensive tackle from Texas. That guy is down to Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Michigan. It sounds like the biggest factor is A&M. But getting him in for the visit, a lot of the insiders and some of the staff was, stressing that just getting him here for the visit would be huge for Tennessee landing him, that they would probably have the momentum in landing him. I think that would be one to definitely keep your eyes on as he, hit it off with guys like Boo Carter, Mike Matthews, Jordan Ross, etc. And then, mentioning the 5-star edge rushers that were here, Jordan Ross, Elijah Rushing. Jordan Ross, really thought that one was trending away for a long time, thinking that Georgia and Florida were kind of getting more momentum there. Steve Wiltfong, the week before Jordan Ross's OV was last week, said that Tennessee is the team to beat. Obviously, an official visit, already wrapped up his visits elsewhere. You can only take one visit per school. I would hope that means a lot for Tennessee, but I think this one's going to go to December and early signing day. Not going to be done anytime soon. But one that is going to be done is Elijah Rushing after his visit came out with the July 9th date. I think this one could be 50-50. I don't think it benefits Tennessee really well that it's coming like immediately after his OV. A guy that's from the state of Arizona, out west edge. I think Tennessee would love to get him here. I think he hit it off. Obviously had like all the dark mode. They put him through like the whole presentation like you would with a commit, but we obviously know from last year and past cycles that really doesn't mean anything. They can always, switch up and go to a different school. I think Tennessee and Oregon are the two schools in the driver's seat there, but I would lean, Oregon by about like 10%, 60-40 going in. I think Tennessee's going to be able to make some final phone calls, and if they can pull that one off, that is definitely a Rodney Garner, Mike Eckler moment. But Drew, obviously Mike Matthews, Amari Jefferson, those guys deciding before, the end of July. I think this is going to be a crazy, crazy July for both sides of the ball at Tennessee. I think they've had and really filled in the defensive side really quietly with guys like Kellen Lindstorm and Jordan Burns, wanting to get guys like, Edwin Spillman locked in, but now you filled in those safeties and corner spots, with Caleb Beasley, Marcus Gore, and Boo Carter, all three in-state guys. I think Tennessee's going to try to wrap it up and try to get their huge big pieces before they make some late additions in December and May. But I think Tennessee's positioned themselves really well in the months of June and May of getting guys on campus that are trying to decide by their senior season. And we'll see how it plays out for Tennessee. I think a lot of guys are going to come off the board in the next month. Maybe 10 of the targets, do they all come to Tennessee? We'll have to find out. But I think Tennessee's positioned themselves really, really well. And it's, through the calculators, and if we're doing all the math ratings right, it's looking like Tennessee, if they have it all go their way, could have a top 5 class in their hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, you shouldn't be too surprised about that, just given like what we're coming off of from last year, and as well as just what Heupel and the staff, and especially Rodney Garner, and what they built in such a short span. I mean, I think it'd be huge. I mean, just for this program in general, to be able to get guys like Amari Jefferson and Mike Matthews to come over here. I know Ryan Wingo was a guy that we, said a few months ago that was a possibility. And I've heard today, even from, some insider from Georgia, saying that he's not going to go to Georgia.
Missouri bound, man. It's crazy.
It's going to be interesting. I don't know if he would come here. I still don't know.
I think it's really weird, man, because at this point, I think it's coming down to a money thing. And for what was really weird going into the July 16th weekend, it was all about, Wingo coming off his unofficial, and then hosting with Nwaneri, who's at that time his final two were Oklahoma and Tennessee. Now it sounds like his top two are Georgia and Missouri. So just the amount that this stuff can change from night and day, week by week, is absolutely insane, especially in that kind of recruitment. Obviously both Missouri natives. Tennessee has a lot of guys on the roster from Missouri, so I'm sure they'll be having like the final pitches. The whole plan for Wingo originally was trying to get him in for a game day environment for his OV. If Tennessee still has the relationship, if they've not moved on, maybe he gets in for a game like the South Carolina game or the A&M game. Would be a really nice environment. But I definitely I would not be surprised if Tennessee wants to go ahead and lock it up if they get good news from Mike Matthews and Jefferson and Staley. If they don't just go and grab a guy like Anderson or someone that's wants to be here and is not going to play mind games. I think they've had enough and kind of learned from when to push off or when to keep applying pressure. And I mean, like, I'd rather just go get a guy that wants to be here than it's going to mess with us for Missouri. Like, this is my personal opinion at this point.
No, I mean, I agree with that too. And I think they've realized as well, it's like if they can get at least one 5-star like Mike Matthews and Amari Jefferson, who's going to be a high 4-star, if not, in my opinion, potentially a 5-star by the end of the, the recruiting cycle. If you're able to get that, I mean, you should be more than content with that. I mean, you shouldn't be rolling the dice and playing a risky game on still actively recruiting highly touted wide receivers. Just because, I mean, of a lot of these kids, they could definitely see that as a sign of disrespect and potentially going elsewhere. With the Wingo thing, man, I mean, it's unpredictable as hell. I mean, I think a lot of us also thought that, like, he was for sure going to be a done deal at Georgia, but now it looks like all of a sudden, like, now they feel like he's out of their, contention. And, I mean, NIL is a crazy damn thing, dude. If we can't tell from the last few months, is that you really never know when it comes with NIL on the line on, like, how a recruitment is going to play out. But, I mean, I think we're in a great position. I know from what I've heard that, like, a lot of schools like Clemson have been, like, negative recruiting with Mike Matthews just because of the NCAA cloud that's hanging over us. But hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, when we finally get a damn verdict on, like, what our punishments are, that will help us recruiting, as well.
And maybe that does still have a factor. Obviously, the news that came out for LSU's programs in basketball and football, that was not, great to see as a Tennessee fan with that coming up. Hopefully, we're hoping for a lot better news, just because of how well we cooperated and everything else. But I don't think that still has as big as an impact on recruiting as it did when Josh Heupel was first getting here year one, and he had to struggle to even recruit in-state guys like the Wade twins. Like, let's not forget that, or Mark Stoops was being able to leverage over us.
I will say this. I think we're going to be okay because, I mean, for the most part, LSU really only just got probation and a few scholarships revoked. Yeah. We didn't do anything like funneling booster money through a children's hospital to recruit and get kids.
We did not do that. Nope.
So we didn't do anything that extremes. I think we're going to be okay considering LSU really should have gotten the damn hammer.
I mean, if we're going down on LSU, can we mention the elephant in the room going on in college football in the SEC right now? The failure to observe that Kirby Smart has with his program right now. The news coming out with Jamal Jarrett today of what he did on his official visit there is absolutely disgusting and insane. And I'm just glad that my head coach has some decency and respect for human beings, and our program is no longer in the hands of buffoons.
I mean, I will say, so the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has come out with 2 pieces this year regarding the culture in Georgia. The one with about, their speed trafficking violations that they had, which, by the way, is over 300 since he's become head coach, which is just, it's unbelievable. I mean, it really is. And then when you go on top of this, you've now had 11 guys that have been accused of sexually assaulting or raping.
One pleading guilty.
One pleading guilty. One who, by the way, did plead guilty, not only pled guilty, still stayed on the team until he transferred out the next season. And, 9 other guys as well, where we've come to find out that there's been alleged detectives that's saying, kind of like looking at the other eye because they didn't want to punish their beloved Bulldogs. I mean, it's just you want to talk about lack of institutional control in the NCAA, acting like, that we had that happening over here 3 or 4 years ago. Georgia is a prime example of that, and I mean, and I'm not saying this because Georgia's the 2-time defending national champs. I mean, literally, what has been going on in that program is
it's fucking disgusting.
Fucking disgusting. It is terrifying. It is. It's speechless. It's truly speechless on what has happened, what is going on in that program. I mean, you have guys.
Let's not forget, Tony Mitchell at Alabama got caught with 100 grams of weed in the fire. I mean, he's back on the team.
Well, I mean, let's be real. Alabama's been doing that type of stuff for years. I mean, so I think
Jalen McCullough, you get indicted. Like, what the fuck, man?
Let's just. I mean, I will say this. I mean, having $10,000 in weed and a gun in your car while you're driving over 100 miles an hour, not the best idea. But I still think raping a woman might be a little bit worse than that. Just my opinion. I'm
not laughing at that. I'm laughing at the fact that we're talking about like Bama and Florida or Georgia. I mean, Florida probably included. We just don't know yet. But I mean,
well, Florida not now. Florida 15 years ago when Urban Meyer was head coach, 1,000,000%. Which, by the way, when that documentary on Netflix comes out next month, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait for it. But yeah, no, with Georgia though, it is it's honestly it's terrifying, and it's frustrating as hell that this is not being talked about enough in the national media, because I would like to think, because everyone likes to talk about how, for example, Tony Vitello is this horrible human being, and he's a piece of trash, and he's bad for the game, but they don't talk about how that Florida's head coach and how he married.
Oh my God!
He married his wife. No one wants to talk about that.
Oh my God!
People want to talk about about the stuff that Pruitt did within our program and all this stuff, but no one wants to talk about the fact that Kirby Smart sent his players, 10 of his players, to a court hearing where one of his guys was arrested in court for sexual assault, and sent 10 of his own fucking players to plead with the judge on to not charge him and to not put him into a trial. So I'm sorry. For me to be fair, get furious, pissed off, Roane County rage over this, I think I have every right for that, because it's unbelievable that we can just bat the eye on that. But, Tony V bumped, the chest of an umpire who was a total dipshit and deserved it.
Knocked the dude out that walked in his house, and now he's getting indicted for it.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's honestly, it's unbelievable. But before we wrap up the show, though, I did want to talk about one thing with football recruiting, which I personally...
I was going to do some crystal balls before we wrap it up.
So, before we do the crystal balls, right, I want to talk about this. Ricardo Jones.
My God. Okay, we're just gonna break the fourth wall. This was fucking ridiculous.
For our listeners that don't know who that is, and trust me, I didn't even know who he was.
They don't know who he is because I've never mentioned him on a recruiting turnaround ever on the show.
4-star safety that committed to Clemson yesterday. He gained a little bit of national attention based on the fact that when he did his unveiling, that he had a Vols t-shirt on, put on a Vols hat, and then in the middle of it said, "Hell no," took off the shirt, took off the hat, and then, revealed that he was committing to Clemson. It kind of really cracks me up, because when I watched that video, my first thought was this guy was hurt so much the fact that Tennessee quit recruiting him about 9 months ago, and he still hasn't gotten over it, which, I mean, to an extent, I do understand, because from what I've heard, is that his family were huge Tennessee fans. When he was growing up, he was a Tennessee fan. So I'm sure he wanted that opportunity to come play here. And Heupel just didn't think he was good enough, which I mean, I don't blame the guy.
I kind
But,
of.
but for him to act like that Tennessee was even the running in the contention of him being committed and having that hat on his, platform on his commitment day, it was quite comical. Because I mean, they weren't even recruiting him in the first place.
I mean, Drew, he never had his official visit here. He never, I mean, he had an unofficial here, but Tennessee's never going to deny an unofficial. But I mean, that should have been telling alone that he, never had a Tennessee OV. I guess he went to Clemson. Happy for you, good school to to fall at for a fallback plan, of course. But I would ask your school to show you the final score of the Tennessee Orange Bowl because they definitely didn't post it. I know it's not in their locker room. I know it's not a recruiting tactic for them, just like, Dabo trying to talk about sanctions because he cannot talk about on the field or final scores. And, what Josh Heupel and our defense did to his star quarterback, Cade Klubnik. That's just my opinion. Obviously, Tennessee was not recruiting him, Drew. We never have mentioned his name on a recruiting coverage on our show, I think, ever. I've never seen the name Cardell Jones ever on this show. Sucks. I mean, obviously a 4-star, hopefully probably a really good prospect. Tennessee always, like I said, and we know in the recruiting base, they keep their eyes on the prospects they're recruiting and they've built relationships with. And if that wasn't with Cardell Jones or there's a reason why they stopped that recruitment, I don't blame them. I'm sure they're, off this judgment of character to even do that. I think kind of grants Tennessee's reason for not recruiting him. That's just kind of obviously a childish thing to do. That's the popular thing to do in this day and age of recruitment. But I don't think that helps him or anyone else further down the road if he wanted to be a possibility with how the fan base reacted to it and how everyone else and the Clemson guys reacted to it. I just don't understand that. When I saw that on my timeline, I cringed pretty hard. I was, just trying to have a normal day at work, was on my break, opened Twitter, and I see this kid, I'm like, oh, it has a really good commitment. And then I saw that, and, I hope the best for the kid. I'm not going to be down and, wish anything bad on him, of course. But I just think it was a very, very dumb thing to do. And I think he kind of crossed off a bridge that could have been reopened down the line come signing day if Tennessee wanted to have a different opinion. I don't think they're calling his phone.
No, they certainly were not calling his phone. That's for sure. I mean, and like I said, no disrespect to the kid. I mean, he was a 4-star safety, so he's got to be somewhat decent if he was getting offers from Clemson and Florida
So
State.
was Jack Letchell. They did him dirty.
Well, we know that our boy Jack's going to be tearing it up. Maybe it might not be this year, except for kickoff returns. I think he might be.
It's going to be insane.
I think it's going to be good for kickoff returns. It might not be this year as a safety, but we know the next year or two that he's going to be damn good for us for sure.
White Lightning.
But yeah. Before we end the show, Brando, crystal ball predictions. What do we need to look for as far as recruiting goes in the next coming weeks?
I mean, I definitely think a lot of some of the rest of the in-state guys are going to come off this board. I think Tennessee wants to get those wrapped up, and then you look at the ones coming off the board that have set their date, coming up this week in 3 days, or guys that have talked about being in July, like Mike Matthews and Amari Jefferson. First off, I guess you go ahead and get the in-state guys. I think Edwin Spillman comes out with the top 2 here soon of Ohio State, Tennessee. I think that one's wrapped up before the end of July. I think Tennessee gets their second linebacker in the class, and then we'll try to look their eyes for a third one to add with Edwin and Jordan Burns and Tylen Singleton, get him back on campus. He wasn't able to get here for the past week, had some family health issues, but it's not like he lied like Dejon Terry. He's actually going to come. So I think that's going to be a huge one that Tennessee can put their eyes on. Then you look at the in-state guys, man, Ronan O'Connell, William Satterwhite. I think Tennessee is really eager to get some more bodies in the trenches. I think O'Connell coming off his OV is going to try to get it wrapped up. That's a Tennessee-Clemson battle. I'm going to say crystal ball to Tennessee. Looking at William Satterwhite, I think that was a lot closer. Obviously, really looked at Clemson really, really hard, but the fact that Tennessee was able to get him back that quick, back for an OV after he fell in love. Tennessee's, originally was battling huge programs like, Georgia and Alabama in that recruitment. I think that's a Tennessee-Clemson battle. Right now, I'm going to lean that's a crystal ball to Tennessee as well. I think Tennessee gets it done there. And then I think Tennessee, they did enough this weekend to try to add another body to the trenches. Right now, I think Bennett Warren has a little bit more longer to go, but I think Josh Heupel and Glenn Ellerby are going to be pushing this one really hard. That guy's going to be a guy that can come in day one and probably have significant time on the line. I'm going to put the crystal ball for the 4-star offensive lineman, top 10 offensive lineman to Tennessee as well. And then the big ones, obviously everyone's eager about Braylon Staley coming up. on Sunday. I'm going to put the crystal ball into Tennessee as well. I think he kind of, backed off Clemson. That was Tennessee's biggest threat. Went to UNC as like an insurance plan, but I think he'd be pretty dumb to not, take the offer at Tennessee. I think this class has a perfect spot for him, and they can kind of go ahead and lock your decision in. That'd be smart for him to do. I think the Vols get good news on Friday this week. I think Mike Matthews has this wrapped up, maybe even before July 4th, Drew. I would not be surprised. I've heard, as soon as before Sunday or, maybe mid-July. But I think that Tennessee has done enough. Clemson's going to be in his ear a lot. You got Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore that are really good friends with him. But I think Josh Heupel and the relationship with Kelsey Pope this past week and getting on the boat, probably talking to the Vol Club, chilling with guys like Boo Carter and Amari and Merklinger, and of course Nico. I think Nico's playing a really big factor than more people realize in this. The Nico effect really is real. I think the good news is going to come. I think Tennessee gets it done, lands the 5-star wide receiver. I think Mike Matthews is a Vol by the end of July. And then Amari Jefferson, it's really hard. I can't really put like a confident crystal ball on this one just because of how close it is. But I think that, obviously the eagerness to play both baseball and football, I think, Tennessee baseball is really eager for some good news. I don't think they want to have any more negative news. I think that's a prospect that they really, really want and would work with. He might not be. I've heard that he wants to focus more on football now than baseball. So I think this is a huge opportunity for Josh Heupel and Kelsey Pope to try to get this one done. But I think Tony V is also going to be extremely important, that knowing Amari can do both and have that ability on the field, but also have a chance to come in whenever it's time to end the season and get some kind of action. My gut tells me Tennessee. I think Tennessee does not let this one get out of state like they did Arian Carter, battling a program like Alabama like we did last year. Tennessee just has to do whatever they can to kind of get it locked down. I don't think Tennessee wants the optics of not landing that in-state 4-star wide receiver, a guy that's going to be a crazy athlete on the field. I think Tennessee is going to get good news there. And then obviously we mentioned Braylon Russell, the other 4-star running back. He's going to July 14th. Tennessee seems like they've been trending really well. I think this visit was huge to get him back in. So I'm going to say Tennessee as well. I think Tennessee's going to be able to put all the dominoes in on their offense here, try to get that really well filled. And I think by the end of July, early August, this class is, up there in the calculators. I think the average is going to rise significantly. Tennessee in really good shape with most of their top prospects. I think, Cam Franklin and Elijah Rushing, I'm going to say, for Cam Franklin, I think he's, playing this really weird. Obviously, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Miami. I think it's more Tennessee, Miami now. Going back and forth from Tennessee to Miami. Can Tennessee try to get him back in for another quick visit before he decides? I think even if they don't, I really do like Tennessee's chances, but he's just been floating a lot of not coming to the SEC and going down to Miami. Me personally, this is no diss at Miami, but it really is a diss. Life Wallet, their stocks has literally crashed. They had a failure to observe, a failure to identify their numbers. I'm pretty sure their whole entire stock is being removed from the exchange. There's no telling what that NIL and infrastructure is going to be like in the next year, or what sanctions they have to come down the line from their abuse early on in the NIL. I think Cam Franklin would be smart to come play for Rodney Garner in Tennessee and just, take the guarantee to the Vol Club. I think that would be a huge pickup, and I think it'd be Tennessee's, I'm really worried about the defensive line, but I think Tennessee has known year after year to get that one guy signed by December, and I think Cam Franklin might be that guy, given how Nwaneri kind of backed off. When I look at Elijah Rushing, I think it was a guy, like a great, time to get him in for a visit all the time. I've seen Tennessee in his top 4, finally getting on campus. I'm going to lean, Oregon 60-40, but I would not, rule out the potential final phone calls coming off that kind of crazy visit. We've seen it happen against us so many times where guys trended away. Maybe Tennessee can make a final phone call after a visit and get it trending for them. But overall, Drew, I mean, this class, the offensive side is getting figured out. The defensive side we know is going to fill it up. And we're only in July, August. Tennessee has 4 more months for early signing day, and they can wrap it up lately in the end going into May. But I think Tennessee is going to try to get this thing wrapped up in July and August with their main guys, and then go and try to flip some before signing day and make this class, one of the probably the best class in recent history.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're going to see a lot of movement as far as this recruiting class goes, whether if it's like new guys coming in or even some of our bottom feeder commits on decommitting and going elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting times, dude. It's crazy how ever since they moved, national sign day from February to essentially really December, that it's kind of shifted that dynamic of players committing from August to September, early as May and June now. So,
Yeah.
I think it'll be exciting. 63 days, man. That's all I got to say. 63 days until it's football time in Tennessee. A lot to, is going to unfold from then on. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have any other final thoughts.
I mean, yeah, man. Obviously, a lot to look out for Josh Heupel. Can they kind of get this class locked in? And then we talk about 63 days. Tennessee has to go on the field this year and prove and keep those guys locked in until December. They're going to not just have a one and done season. I think not only that for recruiting, but for the overall like healthiness of Tennessee football. Getting more guys locked in to see the health, like the trajectory going in. If you have multiple good seasons, it's going to only benefit you down the road. It's not just like a one and done, not a one trick pony. So I think obviously there's so much going into a lot of baseball guys looking coming off the board. Tennessee trying to get it done in football, baseball, and a lot to unpack. I guess it's like that one part of the show where we cover all the athletics, but it seems like really all thriving, going into the right direction, given the BaseVols in Omaha, how they ended. I think everything is in really, really good shape. And 63 days till Nashville, man. 11 a.m. kick to Virginia. Hopefully we can, in a few weeks, we'll probably have our annual predictions. Can't wait for that and the sanctions to come with that. But, man, a lot to look forward to. And hopefully Tennessee gets some really, really good news for the next time we're here next Wednesday. Drew, any final comments, my boy?
No, man. I think he covered all completely from all cylinders, whether if it's football, basketball, or baseball. I mean, this is from 2022, 2023. This has been an unbelievable athletic year for Tennessee, and I think it speaks volumes for not just Danny White, but this whole entire university on kind of like getting around our people, in the athletic department, and really try to make sure that we can be the best, in everything school, more or less. So exciting times, dude. I mean, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, man. I guess look out for the Good News Wednesday, and we'll be trying to be back with a full crew, at least some of the crew, and a lot to unpack. A lot of good news, more portal news on the way, and more recruiting news on the way. And hell, hopefully we have an answer to this ongoing madness with the NCAA. But Drew, until next time, and everyone else, good night and go Vols.
Go Vols.